The failure rate for small businesses is incredibly high, but it doesn't have to be. I'm of the mindset that no business has to fail.
This is the Authority Builder Podcast. This is the place to come if you're building a professional practice and you want to be seen as the leader in your market. We're going to interview the top experts throughout professional services, and we're going to share insights with you to help you grow your firm and be positioned as the only choice that clients ever want. Welcome to the Authority Builder Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Gordon, and we got a fantastic interview for you today. You may have noticed that on the podcast, we're doing fewer interviews going forward, but we're going to be doing some deep dives. And I'm being very particular about who we pick to come on. And today's guest is someone that I've been looking forward to talking to for quite a while. If you go and check out his YouTube channel, you will be amazed at the depth of thinking that he brings to entrepreneurship. And so today I'm talking with Geoffrey Kent. And Geoffrey says most entrepreneurs fail in business because they need funding, but they don't know how to get it. As a serial entrepreneur who's launched and scaled and exited 20 plus businesses in the last 5 decades, he now mentors entrepreneurs through the process of getting and building a fundable plan that gets money they need to grow their business and exit when they're ready, and how they want to exit, and is really a passionate advocate for entrepreneurship as a solution to the world's problems. And so I'm excited to have you here, Geoffrey Kent. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for having me here today.
So how did you get to this stage of your career where you've started and grown 20 plus businesses and you really mentored a lot of entrepreneurs?
I launched my first entrepreneurial venture at the age of 12 in 8th grade. And don't ask me, what led to that, because I'm still trying to figure that out. But I'm a military brat. So my dad was in the Air Force, and we moved back from Germany to New York when I was 12. And, some friends I'd made asked me if I was interested in a job, and they were telling me that the commissary or the grocery store on the base was hiring. So I went, got a job there and sacking groceries for tips. And I was just very meticulous about what I did, and just very conscientious about how I interacted with other human beings, particularly mothers of military, servicemen and who are the primary shoppers at the commissary, and so I became beloved there and made very good money in tips. Got an opportunity through there to stock a shelf for Lifesavers. They were coming out with new products and that they were displaying at the grocery store, and so they hired me to stock their shelves, keep them neat. And something occurred to me. I just looked at the wholesale price, or the wholesale price of the products that I was stocking for them, and I knew that what kids were paying for, particularly they'd come out with bubble gum, and I knew what kids were paying in the store for this, and I said, this is like 4 times what kids are paying in the store. So I'm like, I can take my tip money and buy as many bags as I can afford, rip it open, take these individual packs of bubble gum and sell them for twice what I'm paying for them, and still, it'll be half of what kids are paying in the store. So I started doing that. I with all my tip money, taking it to school, selling out of my locker, and I was literally making thousands of dollars, and this is quite a while ago. And it never occurred to me how much money I was actually making at the time. But I did looked at the value of money over time and what I was making then. And, because my father had actually caught me one day counting money in my room, and he was wondering where I got all this money from. And, but I realized that I was probably, the day he caught me, I was probably counting more money than he made in a month in the military, Wow. So it really occurred to me, okay, wow, that was unusual, right? So from there, because my parents grew up in the Depression era, they weren't risk takers, didn't raise myself, my brother, and my sisters to take risks. So we're all overeducated. We were we were basically groomed to work for someone else, So I started this corporate career, first job with Xerox and AT&T, then Deloitte Consulting. I have, an MBA, I have, BBA, and I was getting fired from every single corporate job I got, and I was trying different entrepreneurial businesses part-time while I was in corporate America and failing at everything. So I got to 49 years old and realized nothing's working, and while I was thinking, going through this self-discovery process, I get a call from this young kid that I had actually hired a couple years earlier into a former client. And he said, hey, I just had dinner with my brother-in-law. We've got a tech idea, but we've never done anything entrepreneurial, and we know you have. Could we take you to dinner and pick your brain for an hour and a half? So that dinner led to me writing their business plan. And when we finished the business plan, they said, well, we're in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This isn't Silicon Valley. We're in our early 20s. No one's going to take us seriously. We need someone with gray hair to run the company. Would you be interested in buying equity in the business and running the company? So I bought 51% of the company, became the CEO on day one, and we launched this thing. And we ended up turning it into one of the fastest growing companies in the country and selling it 6 years later. That was literally a decade ago, and I haven't done anything since. So, so now literally on a daily basis, I get calls from entrepreneurs asking me questions about that company. It was called Cognis IT. How did you form a relationship with Dell Computer? How did you land a 7-figure contract with the school district of Philadelphia when you had, virtually no techs? All these different questions that I get asked, and I answer the questions. And when I finished, every conversation ends the same way. They're like, you have way too much knowledge in your brain. You need to share that with the world. Why don't you write a book? So fortunately, I have a friend in the publishing industry, got me a deal, start writing my book. Then he introduces me to a company in Seattle, Washington that takes author content and converts it into online coursework. So the CEO of that company said, Jeff, stop writing your book. Young people don't like to read. They need to be entertained with videos. And oh, by the way, because you're narrating your course, all the text that you have to narrate that you'll end up writing will end up becoming your book anyway. And so I made that pivot in 2021, ended up creating a 7-week self-paced online course to teach entrepreneurs the principles that all successful entrepreneurs infuse into their businesses in order to succeed. And I had actually, so with that tech venture, because that was a private cloud computing company, I actually went back to, my MBA from the Wharton School of Business, one of my majors was entrepreneurial management. So I was fortunate enough to have taken classes from 5 professors at Penn. So I actually, before we launched that business, I went back to Penn, sat down with my 5 professors and asked them one question. And I said, if you were to give me a piece of advice that if I implemented it would maximize the probability I'd succeed in this venture, what would that advice be? So I had 5 incredible conversations. Each professor gave me a list of books to read. I finished reading all the books. And by the time I finished the last book, it kind of occurred to me that it's almost like I was reading the same book over and over and over again. I'm like, successful entrepreneurs say they do the same things. I'm hearing a lot of repetitive themes. So I jotted down these themes and said, okay, when we launch this business, I'm going to infuse all of these themes into the business to see what happens. So I did that. And to my surprise, everything worked, so as I said, 6 years later, we had one of the most successful businesses in the country, fastest growing, Inc. 5000, Philly 100 continually. I'm on television, radio, newspapers, magazines. Everyone wants to know, what am I doing? So, and as I said, we sold the business. So that's kind of gotten me to where I'm at now, where, my youngest has a year of college left. And so I affectionately tell my daughters, when the youngest is done, I'm done. That's probably not going to be the case, but I really, at this stage of the game, just want to give back. Right. So for me, it's, I look at how can I use my God-given talents to make a positive impact on the world, to benefit my daughters and their generation. And it's, again, I was born to be an entrepreneur. I realized that, unfortunately it took me 49 years on earth to realize that, but I did realize that. And so, for me, a lot of the issues that bother me about, huge societal issues like poverty, unemployment, crime, I think are all, primarily related to lack of opportunity. And I think entrepreneurship actually is a great panacea for to resolve a lot of these issues, because it creates opportunity, right? So for me, it's, my goal now is I'm trying to identify entrepreneurs who come from communities that are disproportionately, impacted by issues like poverty, crime, unemployment, and to encourage more people from those communities to take up entrepreneurship, and then provide them with the training to learn how to responsibly scale exponential business growth, scale exponential business growth, and get them to an exit, their desired exits that allows them to create generational wealth for themselves and their families. And oh, by the way, if they're able to create tens, hundreds of jobs in their communities, because sociologists and psychologists will tell us everyone's impacted by implicit bias. We all tend to hire in our own self-image because it makes us comfortable. And so if we find these individuals in these communities and encourage them to pursue entrepreneurship, they're going to launch the businesses in their communities. They're going to hire people from their communities. And so again, if these are communities that are disproportionately impacted by these huge societal issues, every job they create, particularly if these jobs are paying meaningful wages, are having an indelible impact on these huge issues, right? So that's it's a long answer to your question, but that's how I got to where I'm at.
Well, that's a great answer. There's a lot to unpack there, and I completely agree with you. I think that entrepreneurship is sort of the panacea that. I don't want to say it's the panacea we've been looking for, because we've known we've had it. Yeah. It's just not the easiest to implement. Right. And in a world where we all want to have a push button sort of top down solution, it's a bottom up. Somebody's got to take the risk. Yeah. And a lot of those people are going to fail. And so, you look at the stats of business failures, and everybody knows it's like 95% or something fail in the first 5 years. Right. Only about 4% of businesses ever make it over the $1 million a year in revenue mark. And that's still a lot of businesses that make it over, but there's an enormous number that never get there, never reach any meaningful scale. So I got to go back to your five themes, because that sounds like that might be the answer to overcoming that big hurdle. So what are the 5 themes? If somebody is either they've been in business for a while and they're trying to make it sustainable and scalable, or maybe they come across this and they have that spark and they want to take the risk and go and create some opportunity for themselves and others, what do they need to put into it to make it successful? What have you discovered?
Yeah. So I'll start with a quote by Jim Rohn that basically says, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? So for business, my translation of that quote is, if you want to succeed, surround yourself with successful people and do what they do, and you'll experience what they've experienced, right? So, when I looked at, what are these things successful people are doing, first of all, they take the time to figure out what they're passionate about, and then they build businesses around their passions, right? They do what they love, and then they love what they do, right? Or they love what they do because they do what they love. The love that they have for what they do permeates everything they do, and that attracts everyone to them, right? So that's the kind of the first thing. The second thing is they laser focus on identifying a niche target market that they can dominate. So, it's all about finding problems to solve, first of all, but when you identify a niche target market, you can service and solve a problem for, and uniquely solve a problem for. And I have ways to go about doing that. What ends up happening is when you dominate a niche target market, you start to build name recognition. And so when you expand outside of that niche target market, it's easier to expand and gain more customers because more than likely they'll have heard your name before. And so we tend as human beings not to trust salespeople anyway, because we don't know what their motivation is for approaching us in the first place, and so the more trust that you can build into the process, to lower the barrier of entry, the better off you are, and the easier it is to actually try to make a sale. So, if someone's heard your name before, and maybe it's heard something in reference to your reputation, that makes that process easier. So that's the second thing. The third thing is they form unconventional strategic alliances with much larger organizations. So they get away from what everyone does. So when in the selling process, most people typically do what's called push selling. You have a product or service and you're pushing it on an unsuspecting marketplace. So again, people tend to not trust salespeople. So that's a really difficult way to market anything. A more effective way to market is to what's called pull sell. So you form these strategic alliances with much bigger organizations because, small companies and big companies actually work very well together because they have different strengths and weaknesses, right? So large companies have tons of bureaucracy. They have lots of opportunity because they have lots of money to spend on marketing and public relations. But when they identify opportunities, for them to go after those opportunities, it's cumbersome because of the bureaucracy built into large organizations. You have to ask for permission multiple times from multiple people at multiple levels to get anything done. Small organizations don't have that bureaucracy, so they can turn on a dime. So you can form these relationships with larger organizations where you use their marketing dollars to find the opportunity. They can feed you with pre-qualified leads. You do the work, and then you find a way to split the revenue, right? So, and you actually can create some really robust value for your customers when you start to look at four specific quadrants of big companies to partner with. So you want to actually look at companies that have products and services that complement yours. You want to look at your suppliers. You want to look at your customers, and you actually want to look at your competitors. The fourth thing they do is, as they start to get these customers from their strategic alliance partners, they infuse world-class customer service into what they do. They transform the customer experience into more of a familial-like experience so that their customers, evolve into evangelists who end up marketing their brand for them. Fifth, they focus on not only the lagging metrics that you have to put on your financial statements to report to the IRS and investors and everyone else, but they focus on the leading metrics. So they monitor and measure leading metrics that lead up to sales and dynamically alter the both the methodology and the rationale for how much activity they need to do on a daily basis with their methodology for tracking these leading metrics, so that they guarantee that they will always either meet or exceed their sales goals. And then the last thing they do, the sixth thing they do is that, successful entrepreneurs surround themselves with an A team of co-founders, executive leaders, managers, staff, mentors and advisors, and boards of directors to give themselves the highest probability of executing on their vision, whatever that vision is. So when you do all of these six things in concert, it's really, really difficult to fail. And so, the failure rate for small business is incredibly high, but it doesn't have to be. I'm of the mindset that no business has to fail. Businesses don't fail for all the reasons you ask entrepreneurs why they fail. 80% of them are going to say, I didn't have, something related to lack of capital. That's not why you failed. You failed because you didn't execute. The formula for success in business is out there. It's not disseminated well, but it is out there. Lots of people have succeeded. If you do the research, you can figure out what the formula is. I just gave everyone the formula, but you can figure out what the formula is. It exists. But once people get the formula, if they get it, so a lot of it is people aren't getting the formula. And then when they do get it, you have to execute on the formula as well. And so that's the bigger issue. And just to drive this point home, so I'll talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who are looking for capital. And I'll ask, one of the first questions I'll ask them is, have you actually pitched to someone to try to raise capital? And when they say yes, I'm like, okay, well, who did you pitch to? And they'll tell me who they pitched to. And okay. And so tell me your deal. Explain your deal to me. And then, well, I was trying to raise $1 million and I could pay this back in 10 years and I was going to give someone 5% annual interest back on their investment. Okay. Sounds good. Who are you talking to? I was talking to venture capitalists. No surprise you didn't get any capital. Venture capitalists don't do deals like that, So a lot of times you find that, it's not the deal itself. I actually don't believe there is such a thing as a good, bad, or mediocre deal. Deals are deals. They are what they are. It's all about getting the deal you have in front of the person that's predisposed to do the type of deal you have. And that rarely happens. And that's why, so often entrepreneurs fail to get capital. They're talking to the wrong people. And it has a lot to do with their lack of understanding of the financial services and investment industry.
So as I'm listening to those 5 principles that you outlined, 3 of them really have to do with your relationships.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I speak on at least a weekly basis. And I tell entrepreneurs all the time, particularly when I had my cloud computing company, I didn't hire any salespeople. I didn't need to. My customers sold for me. When I sold the business, and I had hundreds of customers and I looked at my list of customers, I could literally point to any customer and tell you what other customer referred me to that customer. My customers sold for me. If my customers weren't selling for me, my employees were selling for me. If my employees weren't selling for me, my strategic alliance partners were selling for me, right? So we partnered with Dell Computer. And we ended up partnering and landing a huge contract with the school district of Philadelphia to manage all their information technology needs. And the first project we got, we made sure we outperformed. And once we did that, Dell started bringing us into their contract with the city of Philadelphia and with other contracts they had. So, as I said, your strategic alliance partners, your customers, your A team, all of these people can act as your external sales force.
Yeah. And it's a different way of thinking. I think it's a less direct method. And I think that's why a lot of entrepreneurs have a hard time kind of wrapping their head around it. They want to go direct to the sale. It seems like the easiest route, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I give, I love using analogies because people understand them, better. So I tell people, let's say you have a daughter and your daughter joins Girl Scouts and starts to sell Girl Scout cookies. Who's the first person your daughter's going to go to try to sell cookies to? You and your wife, or you and your husband. Why? Because you have a relationship. They have a relationship with you, and you have a vested interest in seeing her succeed, and you don't want her to fail. And you're going to do everything in your power to make sure she doesn't fail. So that's why I say you need to create these familial-like relationships with customers so that, when you think about, as you're serving them, it's like, and I actually have this exercise I use when I teach this segment of because I have something called Entrepreneur University that I've launched on Lineable, where I'm teaching these 6 things at a higher level. But the week that I cover, forming these, infusing world-class customer service into your relationships to transform customers into evangelists, I'll walk entrepreneurs through an exercise, and I basically say, think of someone that you're like, incredibly loyal to and have been for an extended period of time, at least let's say a decade. It can be a restaurant in your town. It could be a automobile brand. It could be, computer brand, anything. Just think of a brand, a company, an organization that you've just been slavishly loyal to for a long period of time. And then once you identify who that is, I ask, think of all the reasons why you are so loyal to that brand or that company or that restaurant, or whatever it is, and jot them down. And then once they've jotted all that stuff down, I'm like, now take those things and infuse them into your business. Start doing all those things for your customers. And guess what? Your customers will be equally as loyal to you as you are to that brand or that company or that organization, right? And so people sit there and say, wow, that's really easy. I'm like, it is easy,
So can we make this practical for a minute with some examples? How in your tech company, what are some examples of how you did that and really rolled it out?
Yeah, so we were like 2 weeks old, and so we knew, it was myself and two co-founders. So one person was, he was technical, brought our initial clients in because they were clients of his from another employer. And so he was doing all the technical work. And then the other two of us were, I'm more of a finance operations person. The other person was more of a, he's sales background. But we knew we really needed to get clients. That was kind of the biggest priority early. And so the two of us said, okay, what we'll do is let's do a search on the internet and find organizations that we could potentially get clients from. And let's start attending events. So we'll split the list. And so I had I found this procurement conference in Atlantic City. We were literally 2 weeks old. And so I said, okay, I registered for the conference. I go to Atlantic City and I get into this huge, conference hall, and as I'm just, I walk in and, stop and just do a survey of the room. And so I see in the middle of the floor, I see this booth it was the African American Chamber of Commerce of Philadelphia. And no one's at this booth. And this wasn't, the procurement conference wasn't related to diversity at all. This was just a general procurement conference. So no one was at their booth. But the auditorium was filled with people. And I saw one person working the booth, and she just looked, really bored. And so I just made a beeline and went to her booth, introduced myself, started talking. And, she asked, oh, are you a member of the chamber? I'm like, hey, I'm literally, our company's 2 weeks old. We haven't joined anything, and we don't have a lot of money. So, but she said, oh, membership's only $250 a year, And so I took all the information, and then, the rest of the day, because it was a full day conference, as I'm walking around, I kept noticing, there were, weren't many people going to the booth. So every maybe hour, I would go over there and just start telling her bad dad jokes, and we just built this camaraderie up. And so at the end of the day, we leave the conference, and a couple weeks later, I'm in downtown Philadelphia. I have a client visit. Client visit ends early, and I'm in the vicinity of the chamber's offices. So I said, hey, I got some time. Let me just stop into the chamber office and see how they're doing. And so I stop in, and I see Lynn, the person I saw in Atlantic City. She's at the front desk. So she gives me a hug, and we start talking. And as we're talking, I'm hearing alarm bells in the background. And so I said, Lynn, what is that noise? And she says, oh, our server crashed. I said, Lynn, I think it's a little more important to take care of that than to talk to me, and she's like, oh, don't worry about it. She's like, we've already called our tech support company, and they can't get here for a week. And I'm like, trying to think to myself, who in the world are you using for tech support that can't get here in a week? So but I didn't ask that. But I said, Lynn, how are you getting any work done? Because I know, it was a big enough office where they're using servers. So all of your processing power is in your server, not in your computer. So everything you do gets processed through the server. If the server's down, you literally can't get any work done, So she said, so basically, where someone's working on something, when they're done with the document, they save it to a flash drive. They walk it over to the next desk. That person starts doing what they need to do, and it's almost like an assembly line. And when everyone's done, we take the flash drive, and someone runs to the nearest Staples, which I knew was like a mile away. And they print it and come back. And I'm like, oh my God, I felt really bad. And they weren't even my customer. So I'm like, Lynn, I need to go outside to make a call. So I exited their office, get on the phone, called my office, and got on with one of my techs. And I said, do me a favor. We were in suburban Philadelphia, so we were probably like 30 minutes away. So I said, get in the car and come down. I'm at the Chamber of Commerce, and I need you to look at their server and see what's going on. And so he comes down, looks at the server, was able to patch it and get it up and running again. But then he comes to me and he says, Jeff, he says, the problem is their server is dying. He said it's actually not a server. It's a desktop machine that's been retrofitted to act like a server, and it's dying. He said when I opened it up, it's all used parts. The youngest part I could find was 20 years old, and he said literally this thing is dying. He said so I got it back up and running, but it's going to continue to crash, and eventually, one of these crashes you're not going to be able to recover from because this thing is just so old. He said they really need a new server. So I thanked him for, coming and getting them back up and running. He goes back to the office. I pull in aside and retell what he told me to her. And she says, well, can we buy a server from you? And we didn't do that. We didn't resell computer hardware and software. That just wasn't part of what we did in business. But we did for the servers we bought that we used to service our clients, we bought from Dell. So I said, well, I only have a relationship with Dell Computers. So if you don't mind buying from Dell, I can pretend it's something that I'm going to use, order it for you and just have it delivered here. And she's like, yeah, okay, that would work. So then once she did that, I said, well, okay, well, I might as well, I called the office and got that tech on the phone again. I'm like, I know we have some spare servers in the office. Do me a favor, clear up a spare server, bring it back down, and then get these guys set up on the spare server, because servers tend to get built from scratch and they rarely are built in this country. So, normally it takes about a week to get a new server. So we lent them a server for free for a week. Then when their new server came, we went back out to pick up our old server. And when we did that, Lynn tells me that, we've met internally and we've decided that your company is going to be our IT support vendor now. So I haven't had any conversations about price, nothing, it's just, okay. So I told her what the price was. She said, just give me a contract. They signed it right away. And so fast forward, I sell the company 6 years later. I look at a client list, and I realized that the Chamber of Commerce had referred no fewer than 10 customers to us over that 6-year period. Wow. And I recalled I would go to different events they would have. And as soon as I walked in the room, when Lynn saw me, she was in she could be in a heated conversation with other people. She would stop her conversation, run over, hug me and kiss me, drag me to the conversation she was having, and introduce me like I was the best thing since sliced bread to these people, and just sell my services for me. They're like, you have to do business with this guy. He's fantastic. We used him this, and she'd retell the story. And before I knew it, I'd have a new client, so that's how you can do that.
That's a great story. And I think that's something that's approachable for just about everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You can take the principles in there and apply them anywhere.
Yeah.
I think often what will hold people back from implementing something like that is they think, oh, that's the slow road. But my guess, I don't know, you tell me it's got to be like a snowball at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I also tell people that the easiest sale to make is the sale to the customer you already have, and so so everything you need to learn from success in terms of marketing to customers, you can learn from literally one customer. And so when you focus on doing the best you can for the one customer you have, what ends up happening is not only do they buy everything you sell for the duration of the life of your company, but they end up referring you to all of their peer group. And it becomes an easy sale in that, I started the first 11 years of my career in Xerox and AT&T were in sales. And sales is very, very difficult, right? Because as I said, people don't trust salespeople. You don't know when I call you on the phone or knock on your door or whatever, and I'm telling you I'm a salesperson, you don't know whether I've taken the time to research you, to understand what are your pain points, how can I solve your pain point through a product or service I market, versus, I'm being overly compensated to sell this one particular product in my bag. And so that's what I'm pushing on you because I know I'm going to make a lot of money, right? So what we end up doing, since we don't know your reasoning for trying to market, is I'm just going to put up a wall and I'm not going to talk to you at all. So selling is incredibly difficult. And I found out that, when I finally became good at selling, it was you sell through service, not through sales, right? So it's all about servicing other people. And as I said, when you build these relationships, and it can start with one customer, they start to refer you to their peers. And again, what happens is we trust our peers, so if you have, you think about it, if I tried to sell you something, you probably wouldn't listen. But if your next door neighbor who you have a relationship with, talks about a product or service he or she is using and they love, and they know that you have a similar need because, your lawn needs to get cut too every week or, whatever the case may be. And then they're telling you about some product they're using that's doing a great job for them. More than likely, you're going to say, well, tell me more. What are you paying for that? You're going to ask all these questions that you would ask the actual vendor, but you're going to get it from someone you trust. And so you're going to get the real answers. And then, if you like what you hear, you're going to say, well, hey, can you refer me to whoever it is you're using? And so if I'm the person that gets the referral, because I'm the person providing the product or service, when I get that phone call, I can actually talk myself out of a sale if I talk too much. I got to realize that when I'm getting a referral from someone that's a peer to that person, they know everything. They know what I charge. They know, what my solutions are. They know how my solutions impact a customer. They've heard all of that, so all they want from me is a contract, and again, that just balloons. It's kind of like the game you played when you're a kid where, okay, I'm going to tell you, the teacher tells one kid something. Okay, tell the next kid something. And he just keeps spreading. The way it spreads, it doesn't take a really long period of time before, the entire school knows what the first, the actual message may have gotten, changed a little bit, but it doesn't take a long period of time for everyone to hear. So kind of the same thing goes for if you're doing great work with a customer, that will multiply very, very quickly, Yeah.
And I would imagine, particularly if you're in a very niche focused market, word is going to spread even faster because those relationships already exist within that market.
Yeah. I ask entrepreneurs 3 questions because I'm like, okay, you probably as an entrepreneur, you've gone to some seminar or something. They talked about developing an elevator pitch and value proposition. I'm like, throw all that crap out the window. I'm like, I'm going to ask you 3 yes or no questions, and you'll figure out what your value proposition is at the end of it. And question number 1 is, whatever your product or service is, does it exist anywhere in the world? Yes or no? And the answer is always yes, right? If someone tells me, oh no, I created this from scratch. No, you didn't. You may have created a different way to do something, but what you do exists, and I give them the example of the invention of the telephone. We attribute Alexander Graham Bell to inventing the telephone. He did not. The telephone was invented 200 years before Alexander Graham Bell did. We just, at the time, didn't have a country and we didn't have a patent office, right? So there's absolutely nothing in the world that anyone's going to invent that no other of the 8 billion people on Earth have come up with that same idea at the same time, right? There are no unique ideas. So your product or service exists, yes. Then the next question is every customer in the world who could use that product or service using it from one of your customers, yes or no? There you actually might say no. You might be able to find a niche somewhere of people that aren't being serviced by competitors. So then I tell people, well, that's your value proposition. Service, focus on the group that no one's servicing, become the If I'm an information technology service provider, I'm the information technology service provider that services people with freckles, because no one's servicing people with freckles. I don't know why, but let that become, gain the name recognition from that, and let that, that name recognition lead you into new markets. But if you say, yeah, everybody's being serviced by somebody, then the last question is everyone happy that's being serviced? If they are, I tell them, shut your business down and figure out something else to do. If your product exists, everyone's being served, and everyone's happy, you can't add value, and you're going to fail. But on the other hand, if, you can find customers who aren't happy, service them, focus on servicing those customers. Now you just need to find a unique way of servicing them. So you can do that via speed of service. That's the FedEx model. Post office existed, they weren't efficient. So FedEx came into the marketplace and said, we'll deliver a package on time, faster, and more reliably than the post office. And they've thrived as a result. You can differentiate through cost of service. So there are two ways, high and low. So the high model is Rolls-Royce. Cars existed, but Rolls-Royce realized there's a group of very wealthy people that want bespoke purchasing experiences as it relates to automobiles. So if we give them the option of choosing everything in and out of that car, and so that they know when I drive that car off the showroom floor, I'm the only one in the world who has this particular car. I'm willing to pay $1 million for it, right? The low end of the pricing spectrum is the Walmart model. When Sam Walton invented Walmart, he realized, hey, in the country, you can't find grocery stores, you can't find department stores, and so let me put stores in places where no one else is and price accordingly so that people in those environments can afford to buy in the stores I put up. And he was so successful that he started to then move his stores into the suburbs. And then he was still successful and he moved them into the cities. And I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Virtually every retailer I can think of has been drawn out of business because of Walmart, right? I mean, JCPenney's doesn't exist. Sears doesn't exist. There are all these organizations that no longer exist because of Walmart. And then last but not least, you can differentiate by the comprehensiveness of the solution that you offer. And this is kind of the Amazon.com model, where Amazon.com in the 90s started out as a book selling or, online book selling. You had Borders, Barnes and Nobles, but they didn't sell books online. So they're like, okay, well, we'll sell books online. That took off. And then now you can buy anything on Amazon.com. I was actually speaking in Detroit back in March, and I was jokingly saying, I said this and said, you can probably buy a house on Amazon.com, and I just said jokingly. Someone from the audience stopped me and they said, you can. They said they actually sell 3D printed houses on Amazon. I was like, are you kidding me? I'm like, wow, I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
I was just joking, but that told me you could, so, and for them, it's like, whatever you want, you can find it here. And so that's the other way that, so when you find these niche opportunities, it's just, how do you service that market? But,
Well, this has been fantastic, Geoffrey. I have kept you longer than we agreed upon, and I apologize for that. I know you have a really busy day.
No problem.
We could probably go for hours. I feel like we've only maybe scratched the surface of your wisdom around building companies. So I know you've got a lot of stuff online. Where can people go if they want to take a deeper dive beyond what we've talked about today?
Yeah, so my website is www.thinkbigwithgeoffreykent.com. Geoffrey is the old English spelling, so it's Geoffrey. I also have, so if you just type in Think Big with Geoffrey Kent, I have a YouTube channel. I have a Facebook page. I have a LinkedIn page. I'm on Alignable, Quora, Instagram and Twitter. So the easiest way is just to type in Think Big with Geoffrey Kent and any of those other platform names, and you'll get to my channel.
Perfect. Well, we'll link that up in the show notes for everybody. We'll link to the YouTube channel. Tremendous, deep videos there. You've been very generous with sharing your wisdom, and I'm thankful that you agreed to invest some of your valuable time with me today. It's been really great. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the Authority Builder podcast. Here are 3 ways you can expand your authority. Number 1, get a copy of the $1 Million Book. In it, I show you how to multiply your authority by writing a best-selling book in less than 90 days guaranteed. After all, you're the best spokesperson for your ideas. Go to authoritybuilderpodcast.com/book and get your copy. Number 2, join me for an upcoming Write Your $1 Million Book Accelerator, and let's jumpstart your authority building book now. For upcoming dates, go to authoritybuilderpodcast.com/accelerator. And number 3, work with me and my team to get your book done and bringing in business. Email me at steve@authoritybuilderpodcast.com and put "I want to write a book" in the subject line. See you soon.